Kia ora koutou, and kia ora to the many Wendy Daniels of Ppta Te Wehinga Roa. As you may have noticed, we're having the odd technical issue here. So what we're going to do is we're just suggesting that if you have got a new email, you can leave, check your emails, you can leave and go back in again. If you're one of those Wendy Daniels, you should have got a new link. So check your email that you've got it, leave and come back in it. But if you don't have that email, all is not lost. What you can do is just when you're wanting to ask a question or to speak, you'll just need to make sure you pop your name into the Q&A, and we will then make you a panelist and we can manage it through that way. So there are going to be some solutions in there. Just a reminder, if you can please make sure that you've gone on to Slido and done your voting. So if you're a delegate, you need to make sure you've gone on to Slido and done your voting. We're going to be back in about a minute or two, but I'm just going to give you a chance to hopefully resolve some of our Wendy Daniels, because sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. Thanks, people. See you soon. Kia ora koutou. So I'm now going to pass over. Unfortunately, Hinare Hutana who cannot be with us here today. So we have got Vince who is going to start us off. Thanks, Vince.
Tēnā rawa tō rā koutou katoa ko tatu mai. Ko tai mai ki te hui ātau, te wehenga rua, tēnei ka mihi atu. I runga anō te hui topa, tēnei ka mihi atu kei ngā kāwai rangatira, kei te tēpuru o tira, kei a koutou ngā mātawa, ka ngā hauewha, tēnei ka mihi, tēnei ka mihi. I roto i ngā tātou karakia kei ngā rangatira, ka tuku whakaaro mihi, ki tō tātou whae ki zala, kia matua henare, o tira me te hōranga tira matua henare. Nō rere e mihi kauana, e mihi kauana. Kei ngā kāwai rangatira, nei rā te Māori o te kaupapa e kawe ake rā tātou ki ngā tōpito e wha o te ao. Mai te ka Māori puta ake ki ngā koutou ngā rangatira o te waka Māori. Ka tiaki. E tēnei, whaia, tuko tahitanga o te wairua, pa te rangi Māori me te Māori tau, tātou katoa i pai here. Nō reira kei ngā ranga tira. Kare ki timatanga me inua tahi tātou katoa. Manawa mai hei te Māori nuku. Manawa mai hei te Māori rangi. Ko te Māori kai au he Māori tipua. Ka pakaru mai te pō. Tau mai te Māori a haumi e hui e tai.
Ai ki e.
Tēnei wā ka tuku nā tuki a koe kei te mana whenua Anthony. Te whakatau atu ngā mātā waka, i roto anō i te haeretanga o te wā, te kaunga o te wā, te mana o te wā. Tēnei ka mihi, kei te mana whenua Anthony, tēnei ka tuku. Pai Māori re, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Ora.
Ora. Ko rangi nui kei runga ko papatu nuku kei raro ko ngā tangata kei wainga nui. Ko rangi ko papa ka Ppta ko rongo ko tāne mahuta, ko tangaroa. Ko tūmatau inga ko haumia tiki ko tāwhiri matia. Tokona te rangi ki runga ko papatu nuku ki raro. Ka Ppta te ira tangata ki te whaiau ki te ao marama. E rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, ti hei Māori ora. E te mihi ki a koutou i te mātua nui i te rangi. Nā nei, nā mea katoa, i ngā manuhiri o ngā hauai whā, i ngā waka o ngā taiai whā, i ngā iwi o te motu, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. E te whenua, te tūranga o te iwi, ngā tangata whenua tiawa, tō rangatira, nā te raukawa, karanga mai, karanga mai, karanga mai. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou i o mātou tini mati. Nō reira, haere i ngā mate, haere ki te kāinga tūturu. O tō tātou mātou i te rangi. Haere, āpiti te hono, tātai hono, te hunga mate, āpiti te hono, tātai hono, tātou e tūana ki te ao. Ai, tēnā koe te rangatira, te kaikarapia, tūheite, te kinitanga, whiro potatau. I tēnei rā, tēnā koe e pā moto a whina mai. E tau nei ki runga i a tātou katoa te wairua aroha. Ki ngā kaumātua, tēnā koutou, tēnā kōrua, nā o koutou, mohi o tanga, nā tikanga hoki, nā mihi whaia gazala, papa hinare. Tō wahine, kei te mihi, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. Kia nākau nui tātou ki te hāpai a tātou mahi katoa i roto i te hare, me te koa, me te aroa anō o tetahi ki tētahi. Kei te mihi nā tangata, te waka a Māui, te waipaunamu, me te ika a Māui, mihi atu ki a koutou, te wehenga rua. Waiho i te toipoto, kaua e te toiroa, e tika ana, te kōrero whaia Melanie, matua Mikaere. Whae e koe ki te iti, kahurangi ki te tūohu koe. I tēnei rā, ki te anō, te hitori, me te whaiwahi o te wehenga rua, te riti te huarahi mana motu hake, te reo a rohe nā kaiako Māori. e wā Ppta, e mea nui ki te whakauru, i te tirohanga, te riti ki roto i te whakahaere kia kitea, kia whai tikanga hoki. Mana wāhine e shauna, e rangatira himi, tihei mauri ora.
Ora.
Kia tau mai te aroha o ngā atua a te korowai o te kaihanga, a te korowai o te rangi maari e kua horaina mai i runga i a tātou. Ngā manuhiri o ngā hau e whā, i ngā waka o ngā tai e whā. I ngā kārangaranga maha i te whānau, te iwi whānui, i ngā iwi o te motu, e te iwi o te moana nui a kiwa, i ngā waiwai tapu, i ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā waka. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. He mihi atu ki a koutou.
Ora.
Kia ora.
E aroha,
E whakapono,
me
te rangi maari,
Kia mā kina kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki na te atapura, e tio, e huka, e hauru, i he i mauri. Kauri.
Kia ora and thank you. That waiata singing was much better than I thought it could be. And I'm actually really lucky because there were a number of us here in that room. So we did get that lovely waiata feeling that we have when we have a proper annual conference. It's a very strange thing to be talking to you all via Zoom. The experience here is much like the Zoom experience that we have in our classrooms, where you're sort of talking to this blank screen and it feels very, very strange having no reaction. And I can only imagine how odd it feels sitting at home, because for me, Te Wehinga is about coming together and joining together. Annual conference is that time where we see each other, we talk, we discuss ideas. And so this is just a very basic version of that. So we're going to move on. I'm no Hilary Barry, though I think that Chris here may have some newsboy potential. So we're just going to have to get on with it. Thank you so much for bearing with us with those few technical difficulties that we have had. We will be keeping on with that, and we will make this work, because that's what we've been doing throughout this experience. We make it work and we make things happen, because that's what teachers do. There's a line in one of my favourite John Irving novels, "Keep walking past the open windows," and that's what this year feels like at times. We can't stop. We must just keep moving, and eventually we'll get where we need to go to. It's exhausting, it's a little bit frightening at times, and it's important that we take a wee breather to remember some of the highs as well as the lows. The glorious judgment from the judicial review, and getting to see so many of our members present to the select committee in that first full week of lockdown was something that really gave me life. But I'm very aware as we talk that while outside of this room here in Wellington, we may be at level 2, and most of the country is at level 2, for our Kaiako and Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, you are still going through level 3. And following yesterday's announcement, you have a huge amount of uncertainty about what schools are going to look like when you have to return. And so there is going to be a brief moment at the end where we're going to have a report from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, so that they can speak to the rest of the country about what they have been experiencing over this extended lockdown and what it feels like moving back forward into things. I'm reluctant to talk too long about things, given the many hours on Zoom we've all spent over the last few months. So we're going to move on to business now and a few technical bits. One of the most important things is making sure that everyone has their Slido working. There was a roll taken by Slido for delegates as you entered, but given the various, that it's taken us a little longer to start than we initially intended to, we're going to have a new question popping up on your Slido now that's just checking that you are still here in the Zoom. Zoom, so we can just make sure that we do have quorum here. Remember, only delegates can vote, not observers. And if you're struggling to find your link for it, the details of the event name and password were sent from Wendy to delegates only, not observers, late last week. I think you all know Wendy Daniels. If you're having issues with it, please use the Q&A function and a staff member will be available to offer support. Please do keep that Q&A function clear for genuine Q&As rather than just chatting out to people. Hopefully, Messenger is back working again today, so you can be using a different chat platform to make sure you're keeping in touch with people. But we do have the chat function switched off on this so we don't end up with a whole sub-debate. We'll be using that Q&A function to manage the speaking list. So when you're wanting to speak, you'll put your name and whether you'll be speaking for, against, or a procedural. The techies here will need to transform you digitally to give you speaking rights. So you'll need to click a box to allow this, then wait for me to call on you. So we've got all sorts of magic happening here, hopefully behind the scenes. Unlike in our usual face-to-face conferences, you'll be able to signal that you want to speak before the speaker has concluded. And this is actually encouraged, odd though it is, as it allows us to get the technical wizardry working at our end and to manage that speaking list with fewer gaps. So do feel free to pop up once those moving speeches have happened to start putting your name on the list if you have it. So we should have that confirming that you are watching. Are you currently in the Zoom call? We've still got a few sneaking in there on it. We did have more people earlier. I'm going to keep that running in the background just while so if you can make sure that you're getting onto Slido to make sure that you can get that voting done. But while that is still going on in the background, I'm just going to pass over to our General Secretary, Michael Stevenson.
Thank you, Melanie, and kia ora te whānau te wehingarua. Normally at this time I would do a roll call of delegates present and also hand around the grand green book for you to fill in your names, whether you're a delegate or observer. But in the case of a Zoom meeting like this, we've done that electronically as you entered the meeting at the start. But I will get on to a couple of items of business, and one of those is the election or nomination process for President, Junior Vice President and members of the Executive. So most of the positions are filled by way of nomination, but there will be some elections that will occur in the first 2 weeks of Term 4. Normally these take place by paper ballot voting in branches, but given the COVID times we live in, uncertainty around whether all branches will be open and health and safety issues with managing a manual ballot, we've moved these elections online, and so early in the morning on the 18th of October, you'll be getting an email from elections around how to vote. Without further ado, there'll be an election for the position of Association President for 2022-23 between Miles Langdon and Melanie Webber. There'll also be an election for Junior Vice President at the same time between Chris Abercrombie and Miles Langdon. In Aoraki, Emma Ppta is re-elected, and in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, all 4 wards are filled by way of nomination: Austin in the Northern Ward, Kieran in the Southern, Lawrence Eastern, and Louise in the Western Ward. Recently we held some by-election nominations which filled this position in Bay of Plenty Central Plateau, Rob McCafferty. In Canterbury, Jacinta and Bernie Lee are returned there. In counties Manukau, there will be an election in early term form between Pohiri and Stephanie Walton. Hauraki Coromandel, Western Bay of Plenty, Tanya Ray is re-elected, and in Hawke's Bay, East Coast, Amanda Moyes is. Hutt Valley, Wairarapa, Evan Jones is re-elected, and Manawatu, Whanganui, Rob Tor is. Nelson West Coast sees Michael Waller returned. A new executive member in Northland, Catherine Martin, congratulations. In Otago, Joe Hunter's returned, and in Southland, Chris Abercrombie's returned. In Taranaki, there will be an election between Grant Colley and Simon Reid. Waikato, Vinnie is returned, And in Wellington Marlborough, where we have 2 vacancies, Doug Clark and Simon Curnow are declared elected. So congratulations to those members who have been re-elected already, and good luck to those who face elections in the first couple of weeks of Term 4. The second item from me is announcing the Service Awards, and we don't do presentations even at a face-to-face annual conference because those take place back in regions, because these are for grassroots activism at a branch or regional level. But congratulations to Rosie Adams and Martin Kane of Araki, Bruce Anik, Marianne Maxwell, Mike Murray, Bridget Raymond, Barry Thompson and Willem van der Ende of Canterbury. Congratulations to Katarina Pitiroi and Te Kānua Pitiroi of the Central Plateau, Alastair MacDonald of Otago, Miriama Barton and Ross Hope of Waikato. And as I said a few minutes ago, we look forward to hearing about how the awards ceremonies go back in your regions, or should you want one of us to come up there, we'd be more than obliging, COVID restrictions permitting. Thank you again, and I'll hand back to Melanie.
Thank you, Michael. So it looks like that Slido has given us a quorum. So now to the minutes from 2020, and I'm going to move from the chair, so ready with your Slidos again, that the minutes of the 2020 annual conference be received. Now you may want to, while this is happening, begin to think about if you have any questions on these. Please note typos do not need to be mentioned, Mr. McNamara. Just email these to National Office. Remember, you're using the Q&A function to indicate if you have a question. Now, those minutes have now been received, so we're just waiting to see if we've got any questions coming through on those minutes. So I'm going to give you a little bit of wait time like a good teacher. We could talk about us amongst ourselves while that's happening. We could pretend we've got banter going on.
A little bit of sort of light social talk banter. Is that what we need to do?
Yeah, we've got to be all funsy stuff.
Got all funsy stuff.
Yeah. Remember that the observers can't vote, so it's just the delegates who are voting, but they're the ones who should have been given that link and that code, so that should be fine. So do we have any questions coming through to the...
Not on the minutes.
I am deeply disappointed given that Tamaki Makaurau had added Trevor to their delegation. I am very, very disappointed in you, Trevor. He's got questions on other things, I'm told. It's okay, we will be there with questions. So I'm now going to move from the chair, ready with your Slido again, that the minutes of the 2020 annual conference as amended, well, no, sorry, we didn't amend them, that the minutes of the 2020 annual conference be accepted as a true and correct record. So if you can vote for that on your Slido now. Just so you know, I move on with the Slido once we've reached the point where we've got the appropriate number of votes, which we just did. So don't feel too sad. You've got to get in quick to get your vote registered. So that is carried. And now moving to the annual report. So I'm going to move from the chair that the Ppta annual report for the period 1 July 2020 to 30 June 2021 be received. And to your Slido. Lovely. So are there any questions? If you can pop into that Q&A thread if you've got any questions. And we have Trevor with his hand up. So we're just going to do the little magic that transforms Trevor into a panelist, so then we can have him pop up so we can all see him. Which is super exciting because it stops me talking to myself here. Mr. Wilson, lovely to not see you.
Okay, I refer to page 8 of the annual report. I note there are no super staffing nominees within the Waikato and Tamaki Makaurau regions. What is the association doing in these regions to recruit more nominees?
Michael.
Thank you very much, Trevor. You're right to highlight that there are a lack of surplus staffing nominees in the regions you've mentioned, but generally as well. And so the executive at their August meeting implemented a number of initiatives. I appreciate this doesn't deal with the year ended the 30th of June 2021, but what I hope to demonstrate is there's action points going forward. So one was that there be clarification for regional chairs and huarahi on the surplus staffing nomination process, so some education taking place. That a huarahi member be part of the surplus staffing task force, so a role at a national level to try and increase participation generally. And that there be a further call for nominations, including from members on the Māori roll and in association networks. And also that the Deputy General Secretary membership and myself prepare a paper for the executive on how to increase representation amongst the Māori roll and involve huarahi in an approvals process there. Hopefully, while there's been a lack of them in the last association year, steps are being taken to address that in future years.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have any further questions? Nothing on Q&A. So I'm going to move from the chair that the PPTA annual report for the period 1 July 2020 to 30 June 2021 be adopted. And back to your Slido for all those in favour. Aye. We're saying aye just because we can, just to make you all jealous at home. I like to imagine everyone sitting there yelling aye and your family members are getting real confused. Brilliant, thank you. So I'm now going to pass over to our Junior Vice President, Chris Abercrombie, for the financials. Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to move that the statements of annual accounts and report of the auditors for the year ending 31st of March 2021 be received, and it's moved by myself and seconded by Lawrence Mickelson. So jump on your Slido and we'll be able to vote our heart out. That's all good. Cool, so thank you for that. So, financial statements. As you can see from our financial statements, we have a healthy surplus. Now, there's a couple of key reasons for this. One is a great reason. We've had an increase in membership. This is what has led to the 2021 accounts being $450,000 over budget expectations. So that's great news. We're getting membership. The second reason, not so great. We spent less due to COVID restrictions. From simple things like our field officers were not driving as much, to much larger things such as no Māori Teachers Conference, no mahi tikas, and I&O not being in this financial year, being in the next one, being shifted. So this has all led to more cash in the bank, and this can be seen on page 9. Now, you might be wondering why we are sitting on, if I get page 9 in front of me, almost $6 million of cash in the bank. So normally we would have put this into term investments, but due to low interest rates and wanting cash on hand, it's sitting at the bank. So the question then becomes, that executive faces, is what to do with this surplus. Now, we have done a number of things so far. Mahi tika for senior leadership. This has been a great success. There was due to be another one recently, but that didn't happen because of, as you can guess, COVID restrictions. We've purchased a new presidential apartment. We've been supporting PPTA's Secondary Principals Council. SPC has become more active and is doing a lot to support our principal members, and that's great news. Executive is looking at other ways to invest members' money into the membership, and that's the key thing. This money is there to grow membership, to give benefit to membership. This money is hard-earned, and executive takes it very seriously, any spending of it. So we're taking our time to do this mahi, to get it right. So is there any questions on the financial statements?
We have Michael Cabral-Tarry with a question.
My question was actually relating to the annual report, which has now moved on.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that's been answered, and we'll move on.
But it hasn't actually. But if it has, I haven't seen the answer.
So just a reminder to make sure you get your hand up quickly in the Q&A to get your question in the appropriate place.
We've got a question from Trevor Wilson.
We've also got a question from Trevor Wilson.
Yes, question about those consolidated financial statements.
Mhm.
Receipts from customers is an entry in the statement of cash flows. Who are these customers?
Hi, Trevor. Good to be talking to you. The receipts from customers is actually the receipts from the members. It's just that we used the regular template and the word customers wasn't replaced by members.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
All right, so thank you for that. So I move that the statements of annual accounts and report of the auditors for the year ending 31st of March 2021 be adopted. It's moved by myself and seconded by Lawrence Mickelson. Oh, got to get on my Slido. And wait till it hits the magic number. Yep. There we go. Thank you very much, everyone. And now I move that BDO Wellington be appointed as auditors for the year ending 31st of March 2022. Moved by myself and seconded by Lawrence Mickelson. And jump on your Slido. Oh, you already have. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That concludes what I need to do.
Thank you. So we can now move on to our first of two papers, and I'm going to pass over to Shona West and Hemi Ferris-Bretherton for this.
Kia ora. Tēnā tātou tuatahi ka miha tiki a koutou. Kua tāpiri mai ki raro I te maru o Pipi Hei Hei. Tēnā koutou katoa ngā mihi I te tuarua ki Tamaki Makaurau. Koutou rā kei te mura o te ahi. Mā te atu e manaaki e tiaki a koutou. Nā te mea kei te noho pai mātou. Engari kei te mura o te ahi koutou. Nō reira tēnā koutou. First of all, I'd like to, to you, Mel and Michael, to our people at the table, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou mo te mihi mai ki a mātou I tēnei wā. Thank you for your lovely welcome to us. I also want to pay tribute to Auckland and all those whānau, all our colleagues that are involved. Māori say you're at the firing line, and you will continue to be at the firing line and protecting us down here in Hawke's Bay, wherever we are. So much love and much respect to you all. My prayers are always going to you and keeping you and your whānau safe. So thank you for you taking on the burden of dealing with this ngangara COVID. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ka tira ko au te kai nuku haere mo tēnei paper. I am the mover for this paper, and it is my privilege and honour to bring it before PPDA members today. So Te Huarahi would like to commend Te Wehenga-Rua first and foremost, for your continual commitment to the Treaty of Waitangi. So in page 4, I just want to read out in page 4 of the Constitution. You see behind me is the Constitution and our collective agreement, and those are my Bibles. I carry it with me everywhere I go. And I just want to, in page 4 in the preface, it says this, that this National PPDA Conference makes explicit its commitment to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi as central to the Constitution of PPDA. Voting today for this paper again brings reality to this. So ngā reira tēnā koutou to all those stalwarts that have fought to have this in the paper, that have had the discussions to do so. Tēnā koutou katoa. The constitutional changes that Te Wehenga-Rua has in place, I think it places, Te Huarahi believes it places the union, our union, as one of the beasts and the indomitable stalwarts of bicultural change. If you look at the very name of Te Wehenga-Rua, it talks about two entities being different, But we've never compromised, you know, we've moved forward. And if you look in the collective agreement agreement, it spells out quite a number of things that Māori have fought for, and indeed the wider membership have fought for. And not only Māori have benefited, but even our non-Māori members. So it's a constitution that is alive and well, and it continues to grow. Nā reira, tēnā koutou. Now, I want to talk about not decolonisation, but re-Māorification. So decolonisation from a Tuhurai perspective talks about the negativity that is before us. And we want to park that aside and talk about the re-Māorification that has happened in Te Wehenga Rua. You know, as the government seeks to achieve change through decolonisation, we've achieved phenomenal change through re-Māorification, which means putting Māori at the decision-making table. And Te Huarahi have done that. Of late this year, and I pay homage to you, Michael, we have 2 kaihotu positions in head office, plus 2 āpiha mātauranga positions. Phenomenal stuff. And so we are at the decision-making table. And to that, I take my hat off, which I won't take my hat off because it needs a bit of dye. Anyway, listening to the voice of Māori has been an absolute goal of Te Wehenga Rua, and it has continued. I've been a member of this union for 38 years and a very proud stalwart of what has come about as a result of being part of that, being that membership. Look, more importantly, Te Wehenga Rua hasn't shied away from its bicultural commitment. Never have you shied away. In fact, it has kind of placed us on the political landscape as being a beast, a bicultural beast that is to be reckoned with. Honestly, when I look at government changes, when we look at the policies before us, we've got kahikatia, we've got taumai te reo, we've got the authenticizing of the social science curriculum, all those policy changes, and the 5 Māori MPs within that within the government, there are some fantastic changes that are happening. So PPTA, before those changes even came, we had made those within our constitution and within our collective contract. I want to talk about championing the goodness within our association, and we have done that. Look, I'm just going to grab this behind me. And I went through it, and I continue to go through it. And every time I have a conversation with members, I talk about the good things that PPTA has done. And this is just some of it. The good employee guidelines in respect of Māori, that's within the first few pages of this document. The appointments, how we appoint, has got some Māori provisions within that. The resolving conflict in a Māori context, that's within here. Resolving ngā manu kōrero kapahaka. So not only have Māori benefited, but non-Māori have, and you'll see it in the Pacific, with our Pacific brothers and sisters, how those clauses have actually helped them within this contract. The Māori immersion teacher allowance, that's in there. The kāhui ako. So many schools, non-Māori schools, are actually benefiting from kāhui ako and the millions of dollars that go into it. Now, some people would question that, but I think there's lots of good being done with kāhui ako. Bereavement and tangihanga leave, it's not just 1 day, it's 3 days, and so on and so on. But I know that I'm talking to the convinced here in terms of what's in this agreement. And so it makes absolute sense that we continue to champion this renaissance of re-Māorification, because it's giving resolve in a positive way, and it's giving a voice to Māoridom. And the beauty about it is that non-Māori are listening. Our non-Māori colleagues are listening, and they've done so for quite a number of years. I therefore ask that all members here today affirm this paper and give credence to this position. Ka tira tēnā tātou I runga I te karanga o Te Huarahi ngā mema Māori kia koutou rā. Hei tautoko I tēnei inoi atu kia koutou I tēnei wā. Nā reira, I runga I tēnā ka mutu take mihi atu ki a koutou, I runga I te ngako o tēnei mea, te re-Māorification. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you, Shona. Seconder.
Kia ora, kia ora tātou. E te tī te tā, ko te hunga whakarongo e whakarau I ka mai tēnei rangi. Ko te tēpu whakahaere me te pirihitini, nei rā te mihi mai aha ki a koutou katoa. Ko kei te ngaro mai tō mātou nei pautikanga ko ka kasi, ka pā mai tōna wairua ki runga I tēnei huihui ngā tātou, huri noa a tēnā tātou katoa. E whakakapi e te wahanga kōrero nei. My fellow wahine toa and mover for this paper began our presentation, outlining the need for our Te Wehenga Rua whānau to embrace constitutional transformation. For many years, Te Wehenga Rua has been at the forefront of innovation, ushering in new and complementary roles to support our key personnel based in Te Whanganui-a-Tara. There are multifaceted positions that serve us on all so many levels. Āhene ngaro nei, a wairua nei, a whānau nei. Likened the korowai haumaru that our president symbolically wears on poignant occasions when entering into the rituals of a Ppta. We wish to provide another potential raukura into that mix today, that of the Māori Vice Presidency. Ken Mea became the first elected Apiha Māori in 1987, and consequently this very forum and the very pou that uphold its key values of manaakitanga, aroha, whakauti are the cornerstones for us to continue to row te wake ike no o Te Wehenga Rua into the future and beyond. The navigation of our journey continues to encounter rough waters with impending changes to NCA, the blatant mistreatment of part-time kaiako, teacher council fee hikes, and the whole mental strain of distance learning, particularly for our tāmaki makaurau whānau. Shona made mention of the two new positions created in the job sharing of the Kaihautu, with the recently completed National Ngā Manu Kōrero speech finals entirely online, an early marker of success. I feel privileged and honoured to have sat in this very hui with Dr. Moana Jackson, who outlined the paramount need for this change that you see before you in this paper today. The impending urgency to continue to acknowledge our Tiriti partnership 181 years later still resonates and will further serve to advance aspirations of kaupapa Māori and education for the next 100. I see it at the top table, Māori Vice Presidency, a slice of the democratic pie, whatever monarchy you wish to attach, the time is nigh. Te Wehenga Rua ki te hoi. Tino rangatira in action. Parerai kia koutou, te maria e whakarongo mai nei, are mai nei, a tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to this. Okay, so we've got a speaking list here. First up, we've got Simon Hirane.
Tēnā koutou. Ngā mihi ki a koutou ngā whakatairanga I tēnei pepa. Koe anō koutou kei te tēpu I tēnei wā. Taino ki a tātou e hui a ipurangi nei tēnā koutou katoa. I do have a couple of questions. I want to acknowledge firstly though the I suppose the purpose or the intent behind this paper. My question is that they're around probably what do we think that we will be inhibited from becoming president if we are Māori? Will this inhibit us to that one position? And secondly, it's a bit broader. Do we think, and I know PPTA have made big changes to themselves, but at the end of the day, it's still a Pākehā structure within, you know, and still, what is the benefit of Māori taking roles in that same building when it is just the same building?
So if you could talk to that, that would be good. Kia ora.
Thank you. And Rachel.
A bit of a drier question. Recommendation 16 reads that the General Secretary will consult with Te Huarahi and Te Reo Arohe around election rules. Members of the Wellington region have asked for an indication of what kind of changes might be made to those electoral rules.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So that process of consultations yet to take place, but initial feedback is around displaying use of te reo in one's nomination. So voting members on the Māori roll can see one's level of proficiency in that area. And a second one relates to timing, the fact that this AGM is occurring after the normal nomination process for President, Junior Vice President and Executive, meaning there would need to be an inaugural election nomination process take place in 2021. So those are two aspects that I'm anticipating, but as I say, I need to get that consultation document out to Huarahi, find out whether they are happy doing it on the papers or whether they want myself to come along to a face-to-face hui and go through it there. So a couple of initial thoughts, but more to come over the next couple of weeks should these amendments pass.
Melanie, would you like me to answer the first question by Simon?
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if we've got any more questions first, and then we'll go to your right of reply.
Okay.
So are there any further questions? An opportunity to ask a question in this hopefully historic and hopefully once and only Zoom AGM conference. Vince has a question. Well, Vince would like to speak, so Vince.
A tēnā rā koutou katoa. Ko tahi anō te kohao te mira kuhunai te miro mā te miro whero te miro pango. Muri ake kia mau ki te whakaporo ki monako a te ture, ko te menue, ko te aroha. Tēnei kaupapa whakahirihira. Tēnei ka mihi kei ngā kāwai rangatira. Pōta tau te whero crowned the very first Māori king in 1858. He stated there's only but one eye of the needle, in which the white, the black and red thread was intertwined within the tapestry of unity. This is indeed a very special kaupapa that we're actually presenting to the wehenga arua, holding fast to unity, faith, trust, and LAW and LORE, last but not least, te aroha. Hea ki te mea he pātai noa, engari he whakatau kōrero. Our president, not so much a question, but more so just to give it added value, and also giving added value and tautoko and support and endorsement. One of the key things is demonstrate genuine commitment of the tiriti o Waitangi, the principles that underpin the relationship between kāwanatanga, the wehenga rua, ngai Māori, under the tiriti lens. The government education sector entity provides joint responsibility with Māori to ensure education system deliver with and for Māori. Chris Hipkins, March 2021. Also along that, our ultimate aspiration with this taonga, a Māori Vice President gifted to the whole of the motu, is to build towards a true tiriti o Waitangi partnership, relationship, co-governance, co-management, co-partnership and co-cooperation. As it was stated by our rangatira Himi, that the tiriti base, this kaupapa is based on the model, stands on the shoulders of, for example, for the likes of Saupiri Ngata, Sir James Henare, Te Ariki Nui Tātai Rangi Kāhu, Se Maui Pōmare, Koro Wetere, Sir John Ture, just to name but a few te whare huia, Dei Miritana, Sir Timothy Hehu, Sir Mason Jury, Kingi Tuhei Te Pōtatau Te Wherowhero, and to name but a few, to celebrate the mana of Te Ao Māori, which enacts the partnership established to the lands of the Tiriti or Waitangi. The drivers of change, as brought to our attention by our Prime Minister, we have a roadmap, and Tāmaki Makaurau, I'd like us to navigate our roadmap to looking at fundamentally that this is the right thing and aligns with and honours the principles and enacts the wehenga rua, and also talking about improving our focus, provide an effective cultural safe environment, improve student performance, educational outcome, recognise the value by a cultural approach to leadership, acknowledge and strengthen the wehenga rua, and honours relationships, iwi Māori communities, and shows an authentic, meaningful response to the tiriti based leadership. In closing, Sir James Henare stated, "Ko tawhiti ke tō harenga mai, kia kore a haere tonu. We've come too far not to go further." E tino nui rawa o koutou mahi, kia kore e mahi tonu. We've done too much not to do more. In right of reply to our rangatira Simon's pātai, kei te rangatira e Simon, e māma noi ho, he waka eke noa kei te rangatira, he waka eke noa, we are all in this together. Tēnā koutou, thank you, Presidente Pirihitini, Melanie, back to the table. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thank you, Vince. So on the speaking list at the moment, I've got Grant Colley, then Erin McDonald, then Hazel McIntosh. Just a reminder, if you're wanting to get on the speaking list, you go into the Q&A function and pop your name in. So over to you, Grant.
Luckily, I put my picture up rather than my blank one, which was a bit strange. No, just a simple question. No presumption on it. It just isn't clear in the paper. Would a person have to choose whether to vote for the Maori VP or the existing VP, or would they be permitted to vote for both?
Thanks, Grant. Erin.
Kia ora koutou, Erin McDonald, Taranaki. Yeah, just a few other questions for clarification, I guess. Similar to Rachel's, Taranaki members were also interested to know what that consultation around election rules would look like. So thanks to Michael for giving us a bit of an understanding around that. Also just wondering, can the Māori Vice President also be an exec member? Couldn't quite work out with the numbers there that JVP could be, but the numbers didn't quite work out that if the MVP could also be an exec member, or if they're one, can they not be the other? And then in point 49.2, not sure if it's a typo or just we've misunderstood it. It says the Māori Vice President shall be elected annually by means of a secret ballot of the full members of the Māori electoral roll to be conducted according to rules 62 to 76, provided that no member may serve a total of more than 4 years as president. Was that they couldn't serve more than 4 years as Māori Vice President, or if they've already been president, they can't be Māori Vice President, or what the go was around that? And that is all. Thank you.
So Mr. Stevenson is going to respond to a few of the more technical questions there.
Thank you very much, Grant and Erin. Grant's one's quite straightforward. It's that you vote for all of those roles if you're on the Māori roll, President, Junior Vice President and Māori Vice President if these resolutions carry today. Erin, you said that I partly answered the question on consultation around the election rules, so that's good. In terms of being able to stand for multiple roles, yes, the Māori Vice President. They will be on executive anyway at the top table by the other Vice President, but it is possible, like executive members are, for them to hold another seat as well. 49.2 isn't a typo. That's there for consistency with the corresponding Junior Vice President clause, which goes on to say that while you can continue standing for Junior Vice President, there's a 4-year cap on being President. So it may appear a little bit odd, but it's not an error, it's deliberate. And to clarify the substantive point, the cap is 4 years on being President. There's no cap on being Junior Vice President or Māori Vice President.
So now to Hazel, her dog's disappeared, but to Hazel.
Yes, the dog's not gone far, he's just here. Excuse me, I'm having to have a bit of help with the technical stuff that's going on here. Oh, gosh, never mind. I just want some clarification, please. I'm curious to know a little more about how this role is going to be different from Te Reo Orohi's role. How is it envisaged that this will be a different role? Also, I know this harks back to being on exec. Is it envisaged that there will be an additional cost to the organisation of doing this? Because it's not included in the paper, and perhaps it should have been. What do I do now? Is it working? Huh?
Yeah, it's working.
It's working.
Thanks, Hazel. I think that's the end of the speaking list that we've got now. And are you confident answering all those questions, Shona?
Yeah, I might just get...
Sorry.
You know,
So passing back to Shona.
just in terms, I might defer to you for the extra costs that we have spoken about, Michael.
No, mihi, Shona. So
Shall I talk? Oh, sorry.
do you want me
Shall
to
I
go
talk
on
first?
cost or?
Yeah, do you want to do that after I speak?
Okay.
Well, should we do Michael with the cost, and then I'd love to finish up with you having the final word on it. So if we get Michael to do that clarification, and then we'll pass back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie and Shona. So there is an additional cost here, but one that is no different to a current executive member travelling to Wellington to sit on the top table. Dependent, of course, on geography, how far you've got to travel to attend executive meetings. And we're also envisaging this role will come with the time release that the Junior Vice President and Senior Vice President receive of 0.2, around $18,000 a year, to be released from class at 0.2 FTE to be able to undertake the role and participate fully. So currently that's no extra cost for the association because we're without a Senior Vice President. That's a vacant position. But at a time, we have a full top table, whether that be next year or in 3 years' time, of Junior Vice President, Māori Vice President if it passes, and Senior Vice President. The additional cost to the association would be around that $20,000 mark a year, dependent on future salary increases for secondary teachers.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Michael. Tēnā koe, Simon Moto Ppta mai kia tātou I tēnei wā. Look, I just want to talk about how beneficial, I'll check a little bit. I always say to people, always think about the reasons why you should be doing things, not why you shouldn't be doing things. There is a huge renaissance happening in Aotearoa. And we just only have to look at all the policy changes, the 5 Māori MPs in Parliament, the voice that they've been given in terms of making a difference for Māoridom. And, this union is a beast of a union. The proactive way in which they've dealt with Māori things, and I know there will always be people that will question, are we compromising? Are we giving away? As a teacher of 33 years within this union, I have benefited tremendously. If you go through the collective agreement, there are phenomenal ways that Māori have benefited. And I don't believe we've compromised at all. I believe that it's actually catapulted us into a political arena in a really positive way, both from a personal perspective and a collective perspective. When Tuareg spoke about this role too, we thought, the time has come whereby Māori have to be at the table, particularly when you talk to government. There is a specialty that Māori can offer negotiations, and we believe that if you have that person that can offer that has the ability to articulate in both languages, can actually negotiate in a really positive way for Māori members and non-members, then why not have a Māori Vice President? In terms of what it could bring later on down the track, I think it may do. But at the moment, Te Huarahi is concentrating on the Māori Vice President. If it has more to it, then fantastic. But that's for all of us to decide. But let's grasp hold of this opportunity to really catapult PPTA into another level. No other union has done this. So we have the opportunity to do something great and phenomenal and shift things a lot more and a lot quicker and be at the table of that when you're negotiating for all of our members, have Māori sitting at that table of negotiation. Does that kind of answer you? You talked, Simon, about the buildings. I don't believe the buildings make a place. Tuarahi have had some very political members for a number of years that have fought for the things that you see now in our constitution and you see now in a collective agreement. Lots and lots of tears, lots and lots of hard work. So let's progress that a lot more. Ka pai? Kātai ka mutu taki whakautu ki tēnei part-time.
Kia ora, thank you, Shona. So with that done, we get to move to the voting part of things. Now, this needs to be done recommendation by recommendation. Being a constitutional amendment, we do need a 2/3 majority on the voting delegation amount. So be ready there with your Slido. Make sure you're engaged and get these in. So I'm going to put the first one first. We have to do them individually so that the report be received. Fantastic. So that is carried. So moving on to Rec 2, that a new Rule 65.2 is inserted before the current Rule 65.2 with the consequent renumbering of the following clauses under Rule 65. The Secretary shall, you can vote while I'm saying this, the Secretary shall during term 3 of each year circulate to all members on the Māori electoral roll a notice calling for nominations for the office of Māori Vice President. And that is carried. So moving on to Rec 3, remember you can start voting. That Rule 3A interpretation be amended from Vice President shall mean the Junior Vice President, the immediate past President of the Association, to Vice President shall mean the Junior Vice President, the immediate past President, the Māori Vice President of the Association. And that is carried. So now moving on to Rec 4, that Rule 38.2 be amended. 2, I'm just going to give you the 2. The executive shall consist of a president, a senior vice president who shall be the immediate past president, a junior vice president, a Māori vice president, 25 other members or 24 other members where one of those other members is also a junior vice president, and a secretary. And that is carried. So moving on to Rec 5, that a new Rule 49.2 be inserted. The Māori Vice President shall be elected annually by means of a secret ballot of the full members on the Māori electoral roll to be conducted according to Rules 62 to 76, provided that no member may serve a total of more than 4 years as President. And that is carried. So 6, that Rule 51 be amended to, when a vacancy occurs during the course of the association year in respect of the position of President or Junior Vice President or Māori Vice President, then the vacancy will be filled by a secret ballot conducted according to these rules, provided that where the vacancy occurs within 6 months of the end of the association year, the executive shall have power and may summarily appoint any member other than the Māori Vice President who would be appointed by Te Huarahi and Te Reorohi and other than the Secretary to fill such vacancy for the remainder of the association year. And that is carried. Rec 7, that Rule 51 IG be inserted if the Māori Vice President elected under 65(2) ceases to be on the Māori electoral roll. Because this one wasn't as long, we've got to wait. And that is carried. So Rec 8, that Rule 65(2) be inserted. The Secretary shall, during term 3 of each year, circulate to all members on the Māori electoral roll a notice calling for nominations for the office of Māori Vice President. And that is carried. So Rec 9, that Rule 66 be amended to any full member of the union shall be eligible for nomination, election and re-election to any position except for the office of Māori Vice President, which is limited to nomination, election and re-election from members of the Māori electoral roll. And that is carried. Rec 10, that Rule 67I be amended from all nominations, to all nominations must be in writing and signed by at least 2 full members, or in the case of the office of Māori Vice President, signed by at least 2 full members on the Māori electoral roll.
Procedural.
No procedural motions during voting. So that was 10, all nominations must be in writing, signed by at least 2 full members, or in the case of the office of Māori Vice President, signed by at least 2 full members on the Māori electoral roll, and signed by the nominee in token of his/her acceptance, and shall otherwise be void. And that is carried. 11, that Rule 73 be amended to, where nominations have been received from candidates from any one or more of the offices of President, Junior Vice President, Māori Vice President, and Executive Member, the following rule shall apply. So that's Rec 11. Thank you. So moving on to Rec 12, that Rule 74(2) be amended to, at the conclusion of the poll, the returning office shall count the votes cast in the respective elections in the order of President, Junior Vice President, Māori Vice President and Executive Members. And that is carried. 13, that Rule 75(2) be amended to, members on this roll shall be entitled to exercise 1 vote each for Māori Vice President and 1 vote each on an iwi geographical basis for a member of Te Huarahi Māori Motuhake and 1 vote each for Te Reo Rohi. And that is carried. Rec 14, that Rule 75(3) be amended to elections for Te Huarahi Māori Motuhake and Māori Vice President shall be entrusted to the returning officer appointed by the Executive. I've got some Speedy Gonzaleses going on the votes now. You guys are real good at it. Okay, and we're then going to skip over 15 to 16, that the General Secretary Association Returning Officer consult with Te Huarahi and Te Reo Rohi around election rules in respect of the Māori Vice President position. All those in favour? Aye. So that is carried. And this is, can we hit a big... I hope everyone's doing little dances at home, because this is one of the moments where it feels really, really strange to be passing such incredibly historic changes here in an empty room and without us all together to celebrate and to sing and to all of the things we normally would do here. I'm just so pleased that next year, when we all meet together, we're all going to be meeting together next year with our vaccine passports, not here, we're going to be at the Brentwood, and we're all going to be here, and there is going to be an extra person here. There's going to be an extra seat here, and it's going to be utterly fabulous. And I also want to have a little shout out to Erin for pointing out, she used to accidentally, didn't even call on it, the fact that the abbreviation is going to be the MVP. So the Māori Vice President is going to be the most valuable player on the top table. Really excited to be looking forward to that. So thank you so much for your
Can I just ask a quick question? So this is worthy of media release, so no doubt, Michael, you'll deal with that?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Shouting it from the rooftops. Very excited. hopefully with a person at some point once the rules have been consulted on. So we can say, here's one we prepared earlier. Okay, so moving on from that, we have a slightly less exciting paper to move to, which is, sorry Lawrence, we have a very exciting paper to move to, which is going to be, is Constitutional Changes 2, which is going to be moved by Lawrence Mickelson and seconded by Jacinta Grice. And a reminder that there is only 10 minutes to talk about this, Lawrence, and 5 minutes for everyone else, including the seconder. So over to you, Lawrence.
I'm a little insulted, Melanie.
Soz.
Kia ora. So in Billy Bragg's seminal 1986 album, Talking to the Taxman About Poetry, there is a song called There Is Power in a Union. Some of you probably know it. It's a great song, and the chorus goes, "The union forever defending our rights, down with the black leg, all workers unite. With our brothers and sisters together we stand. There is power in a union." What about people who can't join a union? How do they stand together? Where's their power? Out of hours music and art classes are classes that are run on Saturday mornings at 150 primary and secondary schools in New Zealand in order to allow students, and they're primarily primary age students, to learn music or create art in an affordable way. These teachers are employed by school boards, just like adult and community education teachers, and collectively do 56,000 hours of lessons per year. These out-of-hours music and art teachers currently have no union representation, and their pay is currently tied to the remuneration rates in the adult and community education staff in schools collective agreement, which is a bit of a mouthful, and which I'll hereafter refer to as the ACE collective agreement, from 2003. So that means they haven't had a pay rise in 18 years. Now, 2003, Helen Clark was Prime Minister of New Zealand. George W. Bush was the President of the United States. In the Club, 50 Cent was the top grossing single, and Finding Nemo was the highest grossing film that year. You probably still had dial-up internet, and smartphones were still 4 years away, I should say, sorry. In 2003, the New Zealand adult minimum wage was $8.50 an hour. It's now $20 an hour, and I think we all agree that that is too low. So it's fair to say anyone who hasn't had a pay rise in 17 years is probably working for an absolute pittance. In fact, just recently I saw a music teacher posting on Twitter complaining about this very fact. This teacher had just stopped teaching music after 13 years, precisely because they hadn't had a pay rise this entire time. So out-of-hours music and art teachers petitioned Parliament this year about their pay, and that petition was signed by 1,300 out-of-hours music and art teachers. The Parliamentary Education and Workforce Committee, many of whom we've spoken to recently, agreed that the issues they raised were significantly, and their suggestion was that these teachers contact PPTA Te Whangarua about extending the coverage of the ACE collective agreement, which led to them approaching us. These teachers want union representation and would like to join PPTA. However, at present they cannot. Whilst these teachers are working in the community education space, often in the same sites where adult community education happens, they cannot currently be covered by PPTA's ACE collective agreement because of how those teachers are defined in the PPTA's constitution, which states that adult and community education members are engaged in evening or continuing education classes, where continuing education is taken to mean adult students, and because out-of-hours music and art classes take place on Saturday mornings and not in the evening. So this paper asks the annual conference to approve a constitutional change which will allow out-of-hours music and art teachers to become PPTA members. It's worth noting here that PPTA will check with NZDI before any formal representation happens. We obviously don't want to scrap over coverage, but according to the out-of-hours music and art teachers, NZDI were not interested in representing them. This is a very simple constitutional change. It merely requires inserting the words out-of-hours music and art into Rule 5(1)(b), so that it would now state all persons engaged in instruction in evening, out-of-hours music and art, or continuing education classes or courses offered by the controlling authorities of state and integrated secondary schools, year 7 to 15 schools, area schools, composite schools and primary schools, and including all persons employed as coordinators of programs, assistant coordinators of programs, or liaison assistants for programs, and who do not already qualify for full membership in terms of Rules 5.1a. The current Adult and Community Education Collective Agreement expires in January 2022, meaning that if conference approves this change, PPTA can seek to include out-of-hours music and art teachers within the agreement's coverage when we bring a claim to bargaining for the renewal of the agreement next year. The Ministry of Education has already stated they are happy to meet prior to the ACE collective agreement bargaining with a view to establish a shared understanding of issues this proposal seeks to address. So thus the wheels are already in motion to allow these hitherto underpaid teachers to have much needed union representation. Again, in the words of Billy Bragg, there's power in a union. Let's give these teachers the mana and dignity they deserve. I urge you to support this paper. Kia kaha.
Kia ora, thank you, Lawrence. Seconder.
Reserve.
Thank you. So any questions to this paper or any speakers to this paper? Oh, we've got Rachel. So we're just promoting her now. It's lovely, exciting terminology, isn't it? You're about to be promoted. I like to imagine in your home, there's like, this sudden like wafting. And then you appear to us. Oh, look, she's here. Here she comes.
Apologies, it took some time to rejoin. Background 1.4 says that OOHMA teachers should ask PPTA about extending the ACE collective agreement to cover them. Wellington members have raised questions about the appropriateness of members who are teaching children, mostly, being covered under an agreement intended for educators of mostly adults. So do we have any info on how many teachers of children are currently covered by the ACE collective agreement?
Kia ora anō, Rachel. It's Michael here. We're just waiting for the expert and advisory officer, Anthony, to come through on this. I think he's seconds away.
He had a haircut this morning, so you all have to admire it. Just if we've got any other questions, if you can make sure you pop into the Q&A with those. Sorry, was that another person for the speaker? Simon had an
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Simon. I think you're live to speak.
Kia ora. I just wanted to ask for confirmation whether or not these teachers are trained as teachers, and if they're not, then would they be regarded as LATEs? Limited authority to teach. That are my questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and we do have Anthony here now, so he's going to answer both those questions for us.
Hello there. As far as I'm aware, the people involved in community and adult education will be teaching adults. And what was the second question? No, they're not necessarily trained teachers. So some of the people involved in adult and community education are not trained teachers. And they're not required to have a LAT. But they were required to do the usual security tests and, do the
police vetting.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? No? Oh, we've got Patty Robinson. I wish I'd learned an instrument. I could play it right now.
Well, if we get the out of hours music and art, there you go.
There we can. I can play Three Blind Mice on the recorder.
No, don't do that.
All right.
I think it's best we don't do that. Thanks, Patty, for saving us.
Start. Cool. Hi, Namahi Tato. I have I'm supportive, highly supportive of this paper because my kura Freyberg High School was known in the Manawatu Horowhenua Whanganui region for its music program. And so our rooms, our facilities are used by a number of music teachers before school by our fully qualified music teachers and after school by lesser able but still music teachers. We do have itinerant music teachers who are actually members of the PPTA. So, you can't be a member of the PPTA unless you're a qualified teacher. So we already have that facility in place, but that's not to say that not all of them are teachers, qualified teachers as such. But we already have on our school roll music teachers who are teaching adults and before and after school programs who are not doing anything else in the classroom other than the odd relief that are PPTA teachers. So I think it's if you want to offer choice to students, to children, to anyone to pursue a hobby or to pursue a talent, you've got to be able to facilitate the talent. And my school does that. And because they do that, while they don't do it at the weekends for security purposes, they do it before and after school. So I am in favour of this paper, and I think whoever bought it to the table for making everyone aware. 18 years is a long time to be underpaid. I'm not surprised that they're needing this quite desperately. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, thank you, Patty. I'm now going to pass back to Lawrence for the right of reply.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you for those questions. Look, I think Anthony probably answered most of the important bits of the question. I think just the one thing that I would say for anyone who is a little bit confused about this, that the adult and community collective agreement is quite a different document to the other 4 collective agreements that PPTA negotiates. It does have a different salary scale, a different pay scale, and all that sort of stuff. So this is not bringing these morning class teachers onto the same salary package as regular high school teachers. It just effectively gives them union coverage and union representation in terms of negotiating a fair rate of pay. And so that is all I have to say. Once again, thank you for listening, and I urge you to support this paper.
Kia ora, thank you, Lawrence. So I am now going to put the first recommendation that the report be received. So to your Slido, people. And that is carried. So now we're going to move on to the second recommendation, that Rule 5.1b be changed from be changed to all persons engaged in instruction in evening, out of hours music and art or continuing education classes or courses offered by the controlling authorities of state and integrated secondary schools, year 7 to 15 schools, area schools, composite schools and primary schools, and including all persons employed as coordinators of programs, assistant coordinators of programs or liaison assistants for programs and who do not already qualify for full membership in terms of Rule 5IA, noting that there may be a need to renumber this, depending on other constitutional changes. And that is carried. Thank you very much. And so we welcome in some lovely new and very musical members to the association. Thank you for that. Now, the sneaky amongst you may have noticed that I have actually pushed out. I thought it's better to get things moving along and then to be able to leave you to the rest of your day. But we've got a very important piece of business first, and that is I'm going to pass over to Paul Stevens from Tamaki Makaurau. Just have a bit of a chat. They had been well, I'll let Paul explain himself. Here you are, Paul.
Kia ora. Thank you, Madam President. Melanie, we really appreciate it. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Paul Tokowingoa no Tamaki Makaurau aho. I really do appreciate you staying on. I know that people will want to get back to their days, but we thought that it was important for Tamaki Makaurau to be able to speak to you, given this opportunity. And to speak on behalf of our region, and to do so briefly, which I'll try to do, it is an honour, but it's also particularly right now, I would say, it feels a very hard thing to do. I don't know if I feel like I really know how our entire region feels. We've all been stuck in our bubbles, and I know that you recognise what that's like, but I will do my best to reflect some of the views that we've already been receiving from people across Tamaki Makaurau, and was why we asked to speak to you today. And I'll start by saying that even in the last 24 hours, we've had a massive increase in the levels of anxiety that our members are feeling across Tamaki Makaurau. They are communicating with us, and they are frankly very concerned about the prospect of returning to kura in less than 2 weeks. Term 3 was hell for all of us. And that's the case not just in Tamaki Makaurau. Teaching online, as we all know, is exceedingly difficult. Attendance is an issue. Levels of anxiety and uncertainty have been very high with our members for a while, and I am sure our field service will confirm this, I know. Students too have been under extreme circumstances, particularly with seniors not knowing what will happen with external assessments, which are coming up fast. Lockdown has been hard, but we also believe that if we reopen in a couple of weeks' time without the right provisions in place, things could become much, much worse for all of us. Worse for mental health, worse for our students, worse for our members, worse for the spread of COVID-19 and for the health and well-being of everyone in our kura and in extension in our wider motu. To turn to the announcement of the last 24 hours, we have not been given the certainty we needed for our kura, for our members, for our students. We all need to accept now, it seems, that the elimination strategy has ended, as we've heard from Jacinda quite, I'm not going to say clearly, and we all need to grieve this. But part of the new strategy seems to be to open schools in Tamaki Makaurau on the 18th of October. There is some indication this could be a redecision, but from what we have heard, it seems that even if we are in level 3, with case numbers like we have at the moment, and with community cases, schools will likely reopen with distancing and sanitising of surfaces. In Auckland, we won't be able to go to a restaurant or get a haircut, but we will be asked to return to our classrooms to teach in person, to see groups of 15 to 35 students in closed rooms hour on hour. Auckland has most of the largest schools in the country, including my own, the largest in Oceania, as we say. The idea of real distancing in a kura like ours and in many of our kura in Tamaki Makaurau is actually ludicrous, as many of you will attest to. In any given day, if term 4 goes ahead as they plan, I will have potentially close contact with anywhere from 100, if I were to just stay in my classroom, to up to 3,500 people a day. The idea that someone in my classroom could have COVID and any number of us not get infected just doesn't add up. It will be deemed to open restaurants, to not open restaurants, being safe, but it will be deemed safe to open schools. Many of us do not get this. We know that unvaccinated people can pose a risk to the containment of COVID-19. Overseas, we see that starting to reopen when vaccination rates are low, and they are particularly low, as we know, with young people, with Māori, with Pacific people. 35% currently in the Auckland DHB of Māori are vaccinated. The idea that we can get these rates up high enough by the 18th of October to open our schools, and to hear today that we'll have a vaccine certificate coming out, but that won't be out until November, will mean that we may not even know who is and isn't vaccinated in our schools. Any number of experts warned us already in their responses to the plan outlined in the last 24 hours, and the Mental Health Foundation, I will note, have already said that easing lockdowns will likely not lead to better mental health outcomes than we have now. Our students are struggling in isolation, but going back to school with the virus in our community, not knowing if as a school or a region or a country, we could be back in a full lockdown again tomorrow, or say the night before a final level 3 exam for our young people, seems exceedingly foolhardy. Keeping our students and teachers alive and well should come before any imperative to assess learning. We have already had discussions about this as a region, and our plan as a region will be to ask the government to ensure schools in areas affected by the Delta variant to remain physically closed until the percentage of eligible people in those areas who have received 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine reaches at least 80%. We did think about bringing this as a motion today, but we recognise that Austin has already taken to executive a call to ensure schools and the MOE feel empowered to require vaccine mandates in Tamaki Makaurau. We thank executive for their support. We do not want to be hyperbolic, but this would not be the first time workers were the canary in the mine. Ireland, Singapore, Victoria, New South Wales, each of these places and others tell us that we need to be more cautious than the current plan proposes. And so as activists, we will fight for the safety of our members and for the safety of our aokanga. Thank you all for your messages and comments of support already today and in the AGM today, and for your time. We ask for your ongoing solidarity in this extremely trying time, as we know it is for all of us. As educators in Tamaki Makaurau, we may very soon become the new frontline of this virus. We fight for the right decisions on this to protect everyone, including around the country. The road ahead is possibly the rockiest yet under this global pandemic, and we ask for your aroha and for your voice when we need it. Patua te taniwha koe tamariki. Beat the taniwha while it is still a baby. Kia kaha. Kia kaha. Thank you, comrades. I'll leave it there.
Kia ora, Paul. Thank you so much for that. We will be continuing to talk about this. I know there was discussion about bringing it as a motion, but we were aware that people hadn't had a chance to talk to their regions about it, and that general business generally wasn't possible. So we'll be continuing to do that to support Tamaki Makaurau where we can, and we look forward to seeing a remit from the region that we can take further on. It's a rather sobering note to finish on what has been a rather sobering and strange event, but I do want to thank everyone who's made this possible. To Wendy Daniels, who I don't think anyone will ever forget her name and the work that she has done here. To Christine, to our amazing Streamliner team who've been making all the technology work behind the scenes, to Michael and to Kirsty, to all our amazing advisory officers who've taken us through on this, and of course to my ever wonderful Junior Vice President, Chris Abercrombie. Thank you so much. I can't wait until we can meet again face to face. And I just want to thank you for the work you do for education, for our students, for everyone. We'll keep doing this, we'll get there, and hopefully this will be our last ever Zoom AGM. Kia ora. I'm going to pass over to Matua Vince now to finish things up for us. Oh no, before we do, I did want to do a little shout out to Nat Jump, who on her Instagram, she's made herself her own conference pack. So I like to imagine lots of people out there had their own conference packs that you're sitting there with. Okay, Vince.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou katoa ngā rangatira mō ngā kaupapa whakahirahira, whakaharahara, tino miharo. Nō reira te whānau. Whānau, on your screen as we're looking at, can you give a round of applause for Melanie and the team and the Gen Sec for executing online mahi, hui topa, and the outcomes that came out through the duration of celebrating the outcomes of today. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā I ka mihi ake. Due to humility, whānau, it is very humbling in regards to the MVP at the Prihitini Melanie, o tira koutou ngā rangatira. Very humbling and supporting of all the kaupapa before us. In closing, the final whakatauki I'd like to share to endorse comes from Kahungunu. And I just like to humbly acknowledge our Shona. And the humble whakatauki comes from 28th Māori Battalion. And it states like this: e harataku toa I te tuataki tahi, e harataku toa I te tuataki tahi, engari he tuataki tini. Our strength is not ours alone, ladies and gentlemen, e ngā rangatira. Our strength and valour is kotahitanga and mahitanga, partnership and unity. Thank you very much for supporting, and thank you very much to be able to endorse the kaupapa today. Our strength is not our own, our strength is our whānau, te wehengarua, te uarahi Māori mana motuhake, all the kaiako throughout the whole of the motu, and all of our, last but not least, our students. Hea te mea nui, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. I'm just going to finish off with our karakia and closing karakia, and it is a beautiful karakia, and it's the whakatakatahau e ngā rangatira. Me ino e tātou. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te tonga. Kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Kia hia ke ana te ata kura e tio, e huka, e hauhu. Ki hei Māori ora, tēnā koutou, pai marire, tēnā rā tātou katoa, kia pai tō haumaru, keep safe. Kia ora tātou katoa, nā rangatira, back to the tepu, te pirihitini e Melanie. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora. Thank you, Vince. And on that note, we see you for the last time as a presidential team of, well, 3, we're meant to be 4. We will have someone else with us next year. So go people, enjoy your holidays, take care, and take care out there, everyone, particularly Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Thank you for putting up with our somewhat lumpy ways, and we will see you all face to face soon. Ka kite.